Hey guys, welcome back to Contest Prep University. I'm Joe Klemczewski with Adam Atkinson, and we're going to continue in our series talking about the scientific method. And Adam, you were leading right into the next step would be to start understanding why something works. You observed a good effect. Now you're going to create a hypothesis, which is no more than a guess. You just say, well, I wonder why this works. Let's look at some of those steps, just like I did back when I was in my early 20s. And that's how I started experimenting with, well, what if we left water in and stayed hydrated? What if we left sodium in? What are some of these things that we're doing that were out of the ordinary that created such a dramatic negative effect? What if I backed up and decided to keep some of those in play in almost like an elimination process? So these guys, they say, okay, I don't know why this works. It's crazy. It's a miracle. I just give burgers and fries to everybody. They're introducing, maybe a lot of extra fat, depending on the client's diet at that point, probably some sodium. But this would be the beginning of how to create a hypothesis that then you can investigate. So do you have any comments on just that approach, Adam, and how curious you need to be to even think that way?
Yeah, I think it's easy to simplify the solution of figuring out a hypothesis. So kind of back to, like you said, keeping water in. One of the first reasons I did this was during my contest prep phases, I realized I looked worse on show day. And one of my shows, I kept my food the same and kept water low. And I always looked good the day before and the next day. And the only thing that was different was my hydration level. So I knew that had to change because it was the only variable I was changing. So I think changing a single variable is easier than changing a lot of variables, but you can have a hypothesis on this is why I look bad because it's the only thing I'm changing, or this is why I look good because it's the only thing I'm changing. But again, that was simple because it was literally just water. And we're going to break down a lot of different things with the burger here that will be interesting, I think, for our viewers.
Yeah, and you said it perfectly that it's just one thing. Like, I had this observation and therefore I created a hypothesis. It must have something to do with the water. And the great thing about the scientific method is that you do have to repeat this. You do have to look at all the different variables. You can't just say, okay, well, we're going to test this burger and fry theory. So here I'm going to do a random, maybe, double-blind placebo-controlled group, and they don't know what they're getting and, or why. But at the same time, you can only, to your point, study one good variable at a time. If you try and mix variables, now you're creating different XY points where, well, it could have been that, or it could have been that. Could have been this minus that, plus that, a combination of any continuum level of both variables. But you've now introduced an infinite amount of possibilities, and you really didn't narrow your search that much. And eventually, you have to go through just a lot of different studies and a lot of different hypotheses to get to that point. So, back to your own investigation about water, what did you do next after you had that hypothesis?
Yeah, basically the next show I did, I kept food and everything the same as I did my previous peak week, which was things I had been eating the entire prep. I didn't really want to just, I had heard people doing that, a burger and fries, and I was like, that just seems really risky because I haven't ate that in so long. I don't know how I'm going to digest that. I said, why don't I try just water and see? I know that, the muscles are made of like 70 to 80% water and hydration. This seems like a great scientific move because when you look at human physiology, it just makes sense to keep the muscles hydrated regardless of what other people were telling me to cut water. And I did that. I was tight. I was vascular. I felt a million times better just physically than I did any other show. The weirdest thing about that was I almost felt like I wasn't competing. The day of the show felt like another show, but it was the best I had ever looked up until that time.
So what you did was you went into the third step of the scientific method, which we're going to talk about in the next episode, which is you tested something. You said, okay, here is something I'm observing. I've got this hypothesis. It must be water. So now I'm going to test it. So you guys sit tight. We're going to come back in the next episode and talk about how to most effectively test your methods so that you don't just, kind of blow a show and say, well, that was a failed experiment, which I've actually done in my own competitive career. But we'll see you next time in Contest Prep University, and we'll move on into the testing phase.